Madden, Nintendo, real life. Yeah, I'm Bobby. This is Shiny Brain. Let's talk Madden 26 on Switch 2. And I gotta be honest, I've been playing it this weekend, and my verdict is, you could do worse. But let's get really into it. So this is the first Madden on a Nintendo console since Madden 13, way back in 2012. You had Calvin Johnson, Megatron on the cover, and it was the Wii U game, and, you know, Madden just kind of faded away from Nintendo after that. And I gotta be honest, I know EA is a pretty easy company to beat up on, but I kind of get it. You know, Nintendo had really pulled away from the graphical horse race between, you know, Microsoft and Sony by then. And Nintendo's consoles really did not deliver big jumps in horsepower. And I understand from EA's perspective why, if they're sitting there going like, well, we've got this version of Madden that's running pretty well on these two platforms, and Nintendo's over here doing their own thing. I mean, how much realistically are we supposed to expect them to make a special version of Madden, you know, just for Nintendo's platforms? They did it for a little while. The Wii kind of had like a GameCube PS2 era engine running, and they'd throw in some gimmicks like some waggle controls or whatever on the Wii remote. And, you know, kind of the same for the Wii U. They would bring, you know, like the Xbox 360 version engine. And, you know, I think after a while, they just started looking around like, who's this for? What are we doing this for? And the Wii U especially was, you know, a horribly selling console. So whatever resources EA was pouring into it, I'm sure they just looked at the balance sheet and were like, nah. And you might ask, okay, well, the Switch is one of the best selling consoles of all time. Why didn't they bring it there? And I think it became that horsepower equation of, okay, well, what would we need to do to our engine to realistically bring this thing to this glorified, you know, Android tablet the Switch was? And I think same thing. I think they were just like, it's not going to work very well. And, you know, we've got a just fine business over here on the PlayStation and the Xbox. And the other thing I think you got to remember is, you know, Madden or just American football in general does not have the same kind of international appeal that something like soccer or FIFA does, because EA did bring the bare minimum version of FIFA to the Switch for all those years. And, you know, they found that to be worthwhile, even when it was exposed as literally roster updates each year with no additional features after a certain point. So EA didn't think it was worth it even to do that for Madden. But here we are, Madden 26 on the Switch 2. It's the full game. There's not, you know, there's not missing features, there's not missing modes, but you're making compromises in the way that you would probably expect a game that lives on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X predominantly to work on, you know, Nintendo hardware. Even though it's, you know, new in the sense that the Switch 2 is only 2 months old, the guts inside of it are much older than that. So we're not talking about ultra modern hardware, but the game runs okay. The issues I have with this game have less to do, believe it or not, with the performance. I can live with the performance. Yes, it aims for 30 frames a second. And PS5 and Xbox are cruising to 60. There's no problem with those games hitting 60 in most scenarios. But on the Switch 2, it's already been documented that, yes, you're gonna hit frame rates in the 20s when it does things like switch between crowd and field shots. Some of the menus can kind of just inch their way forward. But the gameplay itself, when you're actually on the field, works pretty well. And I bet if it didn't, I bet EA wouldn't have brought this here. Now, look, if you're going from the Switch to the PS5 and then back to the Switch, you might have a hard time with the 30 frames a second thing. But I think if you are just someone who plays on the Switch, I think you could live with this. I think it is possible to get used to this speed of the game and not be bothered by it so much. That's been my experience playing it this weekend, is that I can kind of get used to maybe a slower feeling game, but then there's just all kinds of nonsense. So I'm going to start with the controls. I'm going to stay up front that part of this is my fault, but not all of it. The game sort of uses the Xbox layout, but the problem that you'll know if you've ever gone between Xbox and Switch is that Microsoft flipped Nintendo's button layout. So, you know, A and B are flipped and X and Y are flipped. So when you're looking at play art and you're, you know, about to get sacked or whatever midway through a throw, I am still, after 4 or 5 days with this game, I am still throwing to the wrong receiver because I have not put this together in here that actually in this, layout, X is at the top of the controller diamond and Y is on the left and B is on the bottom and A is on the right. It's backwards in my head. The other thing that EA did inexplicably, snap is the B button, which, okay, you can adjust to that. Like, you can get used to that. It's not what my brain thought to do when I picked the controller up for the first time. I hit A and nothing happened. And I was like, oh, okay, it's B. The problem with it being B is they didn't switch the spike button. So, you know, when you're like running up to the huddle, you know, your time's running down or whatever in the half and you want to spike the ball to stop the clock, that is still B. But if you just want to like skip through whatever animation happens, now that's A. So the misfire that's happening in my head is you used to, on all the other platforms, A or cross on PlayStation would be snap and, okay, skip the animation, please, skip the animation. Now those are separate buttons, but I've spent the last 10, 15 years or whatever playing Madden with those being the same button. So I can't tell you the number of times that I have hit B on the Switch 2 remote trying to get past the animation because in my head, snap the ball and skip the animation are the same button. So there's that kind of weird brain wiring that you're going to have to figure out if you come to this game. There might be something more serious than that, though, underneath. The button detection on this game is very spotty. So I've noticed this specifically when it comes to the QB slide. It says to tap Y to slide with the quarterback, which, by the way, that has been the same on it's in the same spot that it's been on every controller layout for all of Madden. It's the button on the left on the controller diamond. Square or X on PlayStation and Xbox, and now it's Y on the Switch. Cool. Thanks. I know that. But it says to tap the button to slide and hold it to dive. I am tapping and I am diving. And you know when you're playing and the game tells you this, that when you dive, the quarterback has an increased chance of fumbling the ball as he's being, hit or whatever, because the animation shows him holding the ball in front of him like this, like a moron. So I've fumbled the ball. I mean, it's not every game, but it's a lot of games. I play as Jaden Daniels, okay? I play as the Commanders. I run the quarterback. And right now, maybe this is something they'll patch, but right now there's no way to reliably slide. I have done everything I can. You've already seen me doing the tutorial on this to try to figure out, is it a me thing? It's not a me thing. It takes 10 tries to get that thing to register that I am tapping Y and not holding it. So I really hope EA is paying attention to that and they're working to fix that fast. The other thing I've noticed is that the suggested plays often lack game context and are completely wrong for the game situation. The most common thing I'll notice is like wacky stuff under 2 minutes. So I'll see the defense lining up in prevent for 2 minute drill stuff, and There's no reason for that. It's not like the end of the game. It's the end of the half. And it's not like there's 1 second left. There's like a minute left, and they're out there in prevent. On the play suggestion side, it's telling me with under 2 minutes left in overtime here to run the ball. I need to score. I need to get into position to score. Otherwise, the game's going to end in a tie. And I've seen lots of other examples where it just doesn't seem to understand what's going on in the game. This might be unrelated, but I've also noticed that the commentary can be kind of late. Like the play happens and you don't hear Mike Tirico or whoever talk about it until, you know, the play sheet has loaded for the next play. And maybe that's just a Switch 2 horsepower thing, but it is weird and I did notice. So EA clearly has a lot to work out here. You know, look, the game is $70 at launch. It's a game key card physically, which means that even when you're buying it at a retailer, really, you're still going to need to download it. So you're going to need a lot of space on, you know, your expensive micro SD card to hold this game. I would say wait for a sale, unless you're really, really, really like me and you really just need to have Madden, the anti-drug, in your life. It is cool that it's on Switch 2, and for the most part, it works pretty well. All the modes are here, and like I said, I can get used to the speed of the game at the 30 frames a second. But it's not perfect the way that Madden hasn't been perfect in what seems like forever. Your mileage may vary here. I would suggest supporting it just because I like having it on Switch. And I would say if you find it maybe for $50 at a sale at some point soon, or, you know, maybe around October, November or something like that, midway through the NFL year, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised by picking this game up. But it's a little glitchy. And, you know, if you've got an Xbox or a PlayStation, that's the better version. I mean, it just is. The question comes down to, do you really want to play it portably? And do you mind, you know, making those compromises to make it happen, especially when playing it on a TV? You know, it's all the graphical stuff is going to be blown up, you know, on a big 4K TV, like a lot of gamers probably have. Anyway, that's what I think. What do you think watching the footage and maybe getting your hands on the game too? Do you plan to get this version of Madden? Are you sticking with the consoles? Let me know in the comments down below. And also, how many touchdowns is Jaden Daniels going to throw this year? Let me know. I've got my idea. And hey, if you like this video and you're thinking about picking up a Switch 2, here are some of the things that I think you should know before you do.